Yeah, thanks very much everybody for joining today's session. We're going to have a discussion around returning to the classroom and kind of hints and tips on how to kind of encourage people back. As Jonathan mentioned, any questions that you've got, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will have a decent amount of time to answer any of those off. And anyone who we can't respond to during this session, we'll get back to you offline. We're also recording today's session, so anyone who wants to share it among their team, feel free to share it as much as you want. So I'm not sure who's got hold of the slide deck actually. Can you just move forward onto the first discussion point? I think Martin, are you there?
Yep.
Perfect. So yeah, so I guess over to the panel. From Sales Geek, obviously you guys, you do a lot of training. You have done for many years, including with our team. So what do you think? Do you think it makes sense to return to the classroom, or are you guys kind of staying virtual? Where do you guys sit?
Very interesting topic. We are getting a lot more clients who are asking about, are we doing face-to-face again? Which you've obviously got to make sure that you've got regulations in place, places have been sanitized, and it's slightly different in feel to the way it was. I mean, in the old Sales Geek bunker where we used to do training, we used to be able to get around 24, 25 people, but you were quite close to each other doing it. We can't do that anymore. But it is something that we're getting asked for more and more from clients. But I think the thing that clients are mainly asking us at the moment is, do we need to return? Should we return? What are you getting from everybody else? And there seems to be this feeling of, what is everyone else doing? We should be doing that. I think rather than looking at it from a top-down holistic approach around what's actually best for the client. And I think the first thing that we sort of always ask here is, what are you trying to get out of the training? Because there's pros and there's cons to doing things face-to-face. Logistically, returning to the classroom is becoming more of a nightmare than I think it ever was before. If you think about, say, for example, we work with a lot of sales teams. You've got a remote field-based sales team, and they've got people all across the UK or sometimes all across the world. Bringing them all together into a classroom environment to do a days of learning or 2 days worth of learning, there's hotel stop-offs, there's transport, logistics, getting everybody together. But at the same time, it's a very different feeling from running a Zoom session. And I think part of that as well is how you run that Zoom session. I think that the workshops that we do and how we go about things, they're very interactive. We run them almost the same as if it was a face-to-face session. But we are definitely getting other clients who are sort of coming to us in a very, how to say it, they're slightly worried about doing training on Zoom. They've come out of COVID, they've come through the pandemic, and when we need to do training, but we don't necessarily want to do it on Zoom. And I think one of the reasons behind that is because a lot of people have sat through webinars and have sat through other things that they've watched virtually. And the idea of doing training virtually is so sort of, no, we need to do training rather than watch a webinar. But I think it very much depends on how they actually approach that training and how organizations are coming across it. Because I'll talk a little bit later about the approach that we use, which we're getting fantastic results from, but it is a blend really of 4 different things: face-to-face training, virtual classrooms, Sales Geek Academy and Sales Geek Hub. So some of the online platforms that we've got. But I think it's a very good question. Should we return to the classroom? I think my answer is it very much depends what you want out of that session.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you there. I think the kind of one-size-fits-all solution no longer works for people. You have to give your client the option to kind of take it the way they want to go. Completely agree with that. I guess from our perspective, there's a lot of our clients in vertical sectors where you just can't train virtually. So you've got logistics, construction, healthcare, first aid. You just can't. It has to be classroom based for that kind of kinesthetic kind of approach. So yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. In terms of trying to encourage people back to the classroom, for those people in the room who are trying to do that, I think there's 3 kind of real main selling points for classroom-based training, and one of them I want to pick up from you, Jonathan. So smaller class sizes. So in comparison to a virtual classroom where you can have upwards of 20 people sat in that virtual session, if you've got a small training room that you can only seat a few people in, that's potentially a good selling point for clients, because you can say, well, actually, in comparison to being with 50 people, we're going to have a small group, so you're going to have a lot more kind of contact time with that facilitator, less distractions. So obviously, if you sat at home taking that session, you'll try and kind of lock yourself away. And I think a lot of the virtual delivery is down to how you prepare your students, which you guys are really good at Sales Geek. But in terms of the classroom environment, there's no distractions there. You're there to learn. You're away from your desk. You're away from your day-to-day. So there's less distractions. And the other one, and I'm sure everyone will agree with this in one way or another, is that human interaction. So coming out of COVID, things are opening up again. You can go to the pub, you can sit in a beer garden, you can have that physical interaction, and it's exactly the same in the training industry. So you can go back to a classroom, you've got that peer-to-peer learning, which is a little bit easier, but again, virtually you can still do that. And again, Sales Geek really good at that, using breakout rooms, breaking into smaller teams. Melanie, I've had sessions with Melanie, and she's been really good at that, kind of breaking us into small groups, dipping in and out of rooms, but within a classroom, that peer-to-peer is a bit easier. So that's my take on it. I don't know, from your perspective, Martin, Melanie, what are your guys thinking?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think the sort of change and the pivot over to virtual learning has been fantastic, and I think a lot of certainly a lot of our customers and people in the wider industry have seen the benefit for that. You're able to reach people who might not have necessarily been able to get to the classroom. But one thing you mentioned there, Joe, which I think was a really, really valid point, is that that ability sort of for human interaction. We've been cooped up for 12, 14 months now without, on Zoom calls and virtual learning and things like that. One thing I've certainly found from going from virtual training back in sort of classroom is missing that kind of collaboration, and also the networking as well. It's great to be able to hear people speak, and you can be in your home office or in the office and taking notes, but you do miss out on a lot of that kind of coffee talk, or meeting someone who you could collaborate with in the future and stuff like that. So I think from a delegate's perspective, that's really valuable. And I think also from a trainer's perspective, Jonathan, you mentioned just before we kind of started, kind of going into that classroom environment, it's great for a trainer to be able to gauge the understanding of a class and also gauge their interest. If people have their cameras off, have they kind of got what you're saying? Have they understood? When you're in a classroom and it's maybe a smaller group, you can see people and go, maybe I need to kind of just go through it again, or if somebody's got a quick question. So I think there'll always be room for both. A blended learning approach will definitely be the way forward. But should we return to the classroom? I think, like Jonathan said, it depends what you're teaching and who you're teaching. But I think there'll always be a definite space for face-to-face learning.
Yeah, I completely agree with that as well. I mean, some of the things that we've found at Sales Geek is, like Jonathan said, our clients want different things and one size doesn't fit all. We've got quite a big client at the minute that really wants that face-to-face interaction. So with regard to the smaller groups, I'm going spending a full day and seeing probably what would have been a normal team in one session. I'm doing 4 sessions throughout the day with them, 4 90-minute sessions, so that everybody gets the training, but everybody feels comfortable in the classroom. Nobody's too close to one another. So it's about finding new ways that you can deliver the training that makes everybody feel comfortable, I think, as well. And what Martin said about cameras being off, it's really difficult from a trainer's point of view to sit there and try and give everything you've got to the training and not know what somebody's doing behind the camera. For me, I think if you get a really good group on Zoom, it's fantastic, and if people are engaging. But equally, I think that people should be open to the idea of coming back to the classroom if it works for them. So if the trainer's feedback is that everyone's sat there with the cameras off, nobody's paying attention, and they're not getting what they've paid for from that, then that's a conversation that needs to happen, and maybe something needs to change there. But one size doesn't fit all, like Jonathan said.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I've taken away from the whole kind of COVID situation over the last 12 months as well is that learning no longer kind of stops in whichever classroom you're in. If you're in a virtual classroom, or you're in a face-to-face setting, that's not the end of it. You take that learning home. That self-paced, non-synchronous learning is really, really important for any training business to be looking at that element of it, to kind of add value to that classroom-based session. Certainly, when you do that virtually, you've got to reinforce that learning outside of that virtual classroom as well. So I think that was my biggest takeaway. Obviously, with a lot of people kind of furloughed, opportunity to do a lot of learning outside of a traditional kind of setting. I think that's really important.
I think one of the things that I'd say as well is I think where we see that we get the best out of clients and the best results is when it comes down to that at the point of embedding. because we talk quite a lot in the training industry about delivering training and delivering a training to a client. And I mean, my past prior to Sales Geek, I was at the University of Salford and I led all of the commercial products that we did there. But a lot of the courses that we offered out were done in day chunks or 2-day chunks and 3-day chunks. Very good. At the end of it, you got your qualification out of it. But one of the things that we've really tried to change at Sales Geek is around that implementation and embedding of knowledge. And for anyone that is going to be running face-to-face sessions moving forward, what I would really encourage you to do as well is you might have, say, for example, a 2-day course that you're running. Maybe it's a health and safety course, just taking it as an example. Once you've run that health and safety course and you've done that and delegates have come for 2 days and spent 2 days with you, it's really important to make sure that you've done something later on to follow up on that, to make sure that 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, that knowledge has still been embedded, it's still being used. Because otherwise, it's great that they've got the knowledge, but it's all about the implementation of that knowledge into whatever potentially they might need to do within their health and safety role or within their role. What blended learning gives you the option to do is have a follow-up on that without having the logistics of bringing everybody to you. Now, for any businesses out there, training companies, this is a massive unique selling point for you. Most organizations deliver training in blocks, but if you can make sure that you've got an accountability, some follow-up, maybe a test that happens 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, you might decide that you're going to extend this out. And you might say, well, do you know what? We're going to have our 2-day course here at the start where we do all of the learning and all of the theory. We then set them some outcomes, some guidelines and some things to go and actually do to embed that knowledge. Then we're going to have a follow-up session, a 90-minute session or a 2-hour session on Zoom 2 weeks later to see how did you guys get on now that we've taught you what you needed to learn. How have you gone about implementing that? Give us some examples of when you've used that. So I think what often happens is we go to a training course, we turn up for a training course, and it's human nature. I think that there is a stat out there, and I'm probably going to get this completely wrong, but it's around, we will retain 2 weeks later around 80% of the things that we've learned unless we have used those. So if you go to a training course, you learn a technique, you then spend the next 2 weeks using that technique, it's embedded and it's part, and you'll remember that. But without that accountability of the follow-up, without some follow-up on it, it's so much less likely that the people that are on that course are going to take that knowledge and actually implement it. So if you're running training that is outcomes based, for example, for us in sales training, it's great that we talk about theory, but if we don't get results for clients, so we have to be on it more than ever that those techniques are being used and embedded. But the blend between doing the face-to-face stuff also means that when you do your follow-ups, it's much logistically cheaper for you to do it. Doing sessions through Zoom is a lot easier. You don't have to hire a boardroom. If you've got a boardroom, you don't have to have facilities. There's no logistics of getting everybody there for the day. But it does give you the advantage of having those little follow-on check-ins. And the more regular you can put those check-ins in, the more likely it is that the attendees are going to get the results from why they actually came on that originally. But that's something that we found has been really useful when it's come to that sort of blended approach.
Also, if you're good at that approach, it makes you much more likely to, gain repeat business with that client, gain really positive testimonials from those businesses, and really kind of drive revenue. So yeah, definitely great tip there, Jonathan. Should we move on to our next talking point? So I want to pick you up. I want to pick the first one here about surveying the land, kind of asking your learners questions in terms of a tool to do that. Obviously, you've got your Zoom check-ins, but from my perspective, I think surveys is another really good way to do that. Appreciate this slide slightly different in terms of what it's pointing towards, but in terms of using surveys, that's a really good way to measure level of understanding before courses. How that's been impacted after the course, in between your Zoom calls, things like that. But yeah, I mean, obviously we've already talked about this previously. It's really important that you ask your clients, what they want out of it, in terms of then defining, whether it's a Zoom webinar-based course, whether it's a classroom-based one. But in terms of overcoming people's hesitation of back to the classroom, I've got some ideas on it, but over to the panel. Anyone else got any ideas before I give my opinion on how to kind of alleviate people's hesitations on returning to the classroom? Any ideas?
I mean, one of the things that we did prior to actually going back and offering sort of face-to-face was to ultimately, as it says there, run a survey with all of the attendees that we got. Because when we went into COVID, the bulk of our revenue and the bulk of our clients, it was mainly done previously face-to-face, and it did mean for the training team, there was a lot of bouncing around. But we were still waiting for, I suppose, the go-ahead from attendees that they were happy to go back to that before we started offering it out. Two reasons, really. I mean, you've got the safety of the attendees and the delegates. COVID's obviously brought in quite an issue of having people in the room. But the other thing that we had to think about as a business was the safety of all of our delivery team and our training team, because sending those out to client sites without, first of all, checking with the client site, is it safe for us to go? So we had a sort of health and safety questionnaire that had to go out to all of the attendees. But I think that's one of the things to think about here. Part of that is, what do the delegates want? But also from a delivery perspective, are you putting your delivery team or your trainers into any potential danger, which could be by sending them to an unsafe environment around that area? But I think that's both sides of this as well, making sure that we're doing what delegates want, making sure we're doing what the team want. But we sent a survey out to all of our clients that we previously were face-to-face with, or that we were currently doing Zoom with, saying, what do you want from us and how do you want that to run? We're reasonably lucky that the office that we've got here, we've got quite a sizable boardroom. The tables are quite large. So whenever anyone comes into here, it's quite easy for us to make sure that it is COVID safe. But I would hate to have thought that any of our team had ever turned up at a client site and gone, I'm not comfortable being here. So I think there's a level of making sure we're doing what delegates want, but also making sure that the safety of your training and delivery team has also been met when you're sending them out.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with that. In terms of my perspective on how to kind of overcome people's hesitation from learners or from any business, providing, you know, they've decided that classroom is the way they want to go, I would look at kind of three-pronged approach. So first of all, you know, make sure you've prepped your learners so they're aware of the protocols when they arrive. You know, is it distance parking? You know, is there a greeting process? Making sure that all of that is given to them in a timely manner. They're aware of that before they even, you know, set off. Absolutely right, Jonathan. You know, you need to prep your space. You need to make sure again that you follow those protocols. You know, you're cleaning between sessions. Even about thinking about things like individual lunches. You know, even the little things like that. Making sure that handouts are destroyed if not used, that type of thing. And then I think the third thing in terms of overcoming people's hesitations is really selling the benefits of that classroom-based experience. You know, so your smaller class size, you know, more contact time with your instructor, less distractions. So you can argue that it's more impactful, and the human element of a more peer-to-peer experience. I think for anyone who's in an industry that is complex, so for example, I've been speaking to people in kind of CAD design and in computer programming, and even though that you would expect to be able to done virtually, they find a lot of value in actually having that experience of those people being in a room together. It's a highly complex kind of learning outcomes, and that peer-to-peer element is much easier in that classroom-based experience. So in terms of how do you overcome people's hesitations to classroom-based training, make sure you prep them, make sure you prep your space, and just sell them on the benefits. That's my take on it anyway. I don't know if anyone else has got any other ideas. Martin, have you heard anything from clients or anything that they've done to kind of overcome that hesitation?
Yeah, and I think the main question is kind of a similar one, but kind of turning it around a bit is understanding why there would be hesitation. And I think at the moment it's people would be hesitant because they don't know what to expect. So kind of going from your point, Jonathan, and your point, Joe, it's providing as much information beforehand. You know, we've seen it in supermarkets where there's a bit of chaos, where there's not an arrow telling you where to go. So I think people, if they're prepped as much as possible and they get the confidence that the venue or the training company have thought about the safety of not only the delegates but the trainers as well, that alleviates some of that hesitation, because they know what to expect. They know where to park. They know that they have to sign in a certain area. They know where to wear a mask, where they have to have lunch and things like that. So I think the more information you can give, the more preparation to delegates and trainers alike, is where you can kind of overcome that hesitation.
Mel, one of the things I was going to ask you, I mean, obviously you're doing a blend of this at the moment. Some of it's on client sites and some of it is face-to-face. How do you feel it's sort of affected the relationships with the attendees? I know you've got a couple of clients that you do face-to-face with, and then you might do some Zooms on, but has that given a different feel to your Zoom sessions that you're doing, rather than just doing Zoom sessions? Because you've also got clients that we've never actually met on site and everything's done through Zoom.
I have to say that the sessions that I'm delivering in person, so I have clients where it's sort of 50-50 split. It could be because of location or just because of time. And I do find that the Zoom sessions that I have with learners that I've done the face-to-face stuff with, they do tend to go better, they flow better, they're more comfortable, they're more relaxed. And I'm not saying they're better than just doing the Zoom sessions by any stretch at all, but I just feel that it opens up more avenues for communication. They've got an opportunity to pull me to one side and tell me something before the training starts. One of the things I was going to say about the hesitation, something that we do here at Sales Geek, is we make sure that we're in contact with the line manager to start with, to make sure that we can overcome any hesitation that the learners might have, that they might have as a company, whether it is on Zoom or in face-to-face training, by asking for all the not necessarily objections, but any hesitation that they do actually have, and welcoming the chance to answer any problems that they might have, or something that they're not clear about, welcoming it and giving the opportunity for them to be completely open with all of that is fantastic. And then the trainers here as well. So myself, what happens before a training session, be it in person or on Zoom, is I tend to send a small video or a message on LinkedIn or on email just to the delegates, just to say, if they've got any issues or any questions beforehand, drop me a message. This is what's going to happen. I'm looking forward to seeing you. But if there's anything that I should be aware of or that you need to know, then drop me a message, add me on LinkedIn, text me, whatever you want, whatever I can do to make you feel comfortable before that training starts. That's what I'm here for.
I think Joe might have frozen. Joe's either frozen or he's just sitting very still.
He's really, really interested in what I've got to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly off topic, really, on the sort of classroom-based learning. I know what we're sort of discussing, but it's something that, for anyone who's watching this now, through COVID, we started using videos quite a lot. So before a session, a Zoom session, all of our delivery team would send a video to the team, say, big thank you for signing up, big welcome to the course. It meant that you were a friendly face to come on. But we've also carried that on as we've moved through into face-to-face sessions. So a face-to-face workshop, they'll get the video beforehand, and it just means that trainer is a bit more of a friendly face. But we've also definitely found with using that you do get sometimes a little bit more, not probably vulnerability out of the team isn't the right word for it, but you actually, if they do have any challenges or any issues, by sending them a video rather than a standard letter saying, welcome, I'm really excited to be seeing you, you do tend to get a bit more feedback before the session, which always makes the session flow better because you've made sure that the team are at home. But I think it comes back to, rather than having that formal email with a signature at the bottom of it saying, welcome to the course, this, that, and the other, it's the trainer stood there going, hi, I said, I'm Mel, this is what I'm going to be doing with you. If you need anything, speak to me. And you do seem to get a lot more feedback prior to the session as well.
It welcomes the opportunity as well for any learner problems, any hesitation, anything they might be embarrassed to say in front of other people. I mean, I've had somebody in a training session before now, and I've started the Zoom session, and then afterwards they've come to me and gone, I can't see black writing on yellow. And our training is super colourful, and they weren't given the opportunity beforehand to express that. But with the message now, that we send out beforehand, that is an opportunity for somebody to let the trainer know that they have an issue with certain colour and they can't see certain things, or it might be that they struggle, they've got dyslexia, or they've got an issue or something. Any hesitation like that, it gives an open floor for them to tell the trainer one-on-one with no repercussion from the rest of the team.
So one of the things, so I've just been watching the chat there. One of the things that Terry's just mentioned on there. Sorry, I'd missed those. There is a few different people who commented and put comments on there. So thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Terry. Terry, the one thing that you mentioned there, as a health and safety company, we're well versed in what needs to be done, excuse me, to keep people safe on return to the classroom workplace. What we're more interested in is how to get the seats filled from a sales point of view. Well, how many more ways could you get sales or get bums on seats? Hundreds of different ways. One of which I'd probably say, as we're doing at the moment, if you're trying to get more bums on your seats, you can either run free workshops. So run something for half an hour that people can come and visit and get a little taste of what you're doing. The other side of that as well, obviously, if you're doing that face-to-face, people might be across the country. For health and safety training, I'm pretty sure people will travel quite a way to come on the training courses. But the other thing is to use virtual methods, run a webinar around a specific subject, have a think about the things that you get asked for quite a lot, and run a 1-hour session on that. Sales Geek, we do a lot of webinars, we do a lot of lives, but we decide what we're going to put out on that based on the things that people are asking us for. Once we've done those things, we often do a follow-up afterwards. I'm sure all of you guys, prior to this webinar, if you didn't already know who Access Planet are or who Sales Geek are, you're probably more familiar with what we do now. And if over the next few weeks you need our services or you need to find out a bit more, at least we're at the front of your mind for you to step in and think, actually, they might be able to help me. But I think the first stage, and this is without branching into some sales training, which I can very easily do. The first thing, if you are struggling to get bookings and bums on seats, you need to create more noise in somewhere. Not enough people out there at the moment know who you are. And then there's another section in that, which is your sales process. But at the start of any sales funnel or sales process, the very start of that is always awareness. So anything you can do to provide value and content to your network, it won't happen overnight. You won't immediately do a webinar and you'll absolutely fill up on bookings. But just have a think, the more touch points you can have with a client, or the more chance you have got to add some value to that client, the more memorable you are. That client, for example, might not need health and safety training this second, but for most organizations, over the next 6 months, 12 months, there is going to be a need for one of their employees to go through some health and safety training. If you aren't in their eye line, your competitor will be.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there, Jonathan. I thought that this you mentioned something there, incentivize your offer, free sessions, demonstrating the value of your in-person training. But yeah, you need to grab that attention first, which is definitely something that Access Planet picked up from Sales Geek. You guys have certainly helped us out. In fact, Melanie, we did a session on AIDA only a couple of weeks ago.
What does it stand for, Joe?
I'll have to come back to you on that.
See, this is where the embedding comes in that we're talking about before.
Yeah, I thought you put me on the spot, Melanie.
We'll do a follow-up.
I'll have to grab my notes because I did take quite a lot of notes from that session. But yeah,
you did.
Grabbing attention. So yeah, definitely would recommend. In fact, this is probably a nice opportunity for you guys to kind of give us a little bit more about. You mentioned a few minutes ago, Jonathan, that you have a specific way of working or a specific kind of method to what you guys do. So do you want to kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, Dan, I'm not sure whether you could just click through. I've put a slide up on this, but I've sort of covered it slightly, really. But when we deliver training, we do training quite different from other organisations. And in some way, if you look at, as I mentioned before, the traditional training industry, it's mainly done in day sessions, either face-to-face or on Zoom. We're within the sales industry, there are some qualifications you can do, but most organizations who come to us say we want to make our sales force more efficient and more effective rather than gaining a qualification. We do get the odd one who wants an apprenticeship or something or a recording just on again there. But we developed a completely new way of delivering sales training. As far as I know, there's no one out there at the moment who does things like this. And it was a bit of a test from our perspective. I'd always had this belief, and we as a team had always had this idea that by doing things little and often, it's very much like going to the gym. I mean, if you decide, you know what, I need to get myself pumped up a bit, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to start eating a bit healthier. You go to the gym for 2 days, maybe you go for 2 days straight if you've got a lot of stamina, but maybe you go for, I don't know, you go once in the first week and then once in the second week. You're going to feel a little bit better. You're going to feel a bit better about yourself. If you start eating a bit healthier as well, at the end of that 2 weeks, things are going to be great. Third week and fourth week, if you don't go, you might as well have not bothered going because all the gains that you've got through those 2 weeks will have dropped off again. So we developed what we called our 3 pillars of learning. And the idea behind this was to put in the 3 different things and the 3 different learning styles that we see, because some people learn best face-to-face. Some people prefer Zoom. It's a little bit more, you're in your comfort of your own home. If you're uncomfortable, you can flick your webcam off and pretend that your internet's gone. But other people learn better when it comes to on-demand learning. So what we tried to do was incorporate this into a way that we deliver training to help with embedding, to help with learning outcomes, and to make sure that the things that we were talking about in the training sessions were actually being acted on. So the 3 pillars that we came up with, first one of those is virtual classrooms. There's another diagram I've got, which is almost identical to this in our 3 pillars of learning, but instead of virtual classrooms, it's face-to-face classrooms in there. But the way that we do those is very different. And again, these aren't seminars, they aren't webinars, they're not us preaching to people. These are workshops. We come up with a topic, we talk about that topic, we get the team to do something with that, whether it's in breakout rooms or face-to-face, and then we get them to come back. We set them some some learning outcomes and some things to go and do with that knowledge with a view to coming back to us again. So alongside that, we also use on-demand learning. So for anyone who's not familiar with the term on-demand learning, these ultimately are resources that we have pre-recorded, that we have pre-created, that are online. So we've got the Sales Geek Academy, which has got around 26, 27 different 45-minute hour courses that you can go through in modules. They're very structured. They're all around a particular topic. So if, for example, you're saying, do you know what, I want to get more leads from LinkedIn, Jonathan, we've got courses on there that people can go through. The final pillar as well on that is the Sales Geek Hub. For anyone who's joining this today, I'll add a link in. The Sales Geek Hub is free for you guys to join up for. If you've got a sales team, please send it to them. There is no cost involved. It is our gift to the industry. But Sales Geek Hub's got around 500 different learning resources on, really short form content, 1, 2, 3 minute videos on there. And I suppose going back to the point that was made before from Terry, the Sales Geek Hub for us is our gift to the industry. You can join it absolutely free of charge. But people who join that often go on later on in their pathway with us to doing other things with us. So it creates revenue for us, but it also provides a lot of value out to the sector. But we use these three things in tandem. Virtual classrooms are where we do workshops and exercises. We then set learning outcomes and we set things for the team to go and do on the on-demand resources that we've got. And then alongside all of that is the Sales Geek Hub, which is shorter content that people can just pick up when they need it and as they need it. But we've really found by using this sort of different approach on there, it does create for a lot of salespeople, especially short attention spans. They don't want to be in a classroom for the whole day. You try pinning down a team of salespeople for a full day. It's like herding cats around the place. Doing it in shorter, sharper chunks is a lot easier and a lot easier for people to digest and to take on. And again, all we've done is we've flipped this over now to add a fourth pillar, or swap the first pillar out, virtual classrooms for face-to-face classrooms. But again, the key that I always say in training isn't just what goes on in the room, it's what goes on after people have left the room. And that embedding is absolutely key. I mean, if anyone wants any help with this, if you've got a business at the moment that is a traditional training model, give me a shout. It took us quite a while to get this right, but we are definitely getting hugely better conversion rates and hugely better revenues for clients that we're working with at the moment through doing things slightly differently.
Cool. And just for you, Melanie,
thank you. I've seen that. Yes. Well done. I did wonder when you just disappeared. Then were you just going to look at your notes?
I certainly was. Didn't want to disappoint.
You won't. I don't think you'll forget it again.
No, definitely won't. Martin, can you just pop back a slide, please, just to cover off our final point, which is using feedback. So obviously, we've kind of talked about this throughout, talking to your clients, following up with your clients, making sure that you're re-embedding that. And yeah, in terms of your classroom and encouraging people back, once you get them in that room, it's about continuous improvement. So in terms of how you improve, how you encourage people back, how do you grow your sales, you need to make sure that you're using that feedback. Martin, have you heard of any? Have you come across anyone using feedback to improve their outcomes in the future?
Yeah, definitely. I think you touched on it a little bit earlier, Joe, in terms of using things like surveys and follow-ups and things like that. I think now more than ever with things like repeat business and retention of business, it's really important not just to deliver training and go, right, when you need some more training, come back to us. It's an ever-changing kind of landscape for a lot of different people who come into that environment. So being able to get the feedback and then action it is really, really important, because, and I'm sure Jonathan and Melanie will be able to kind of jump in on this as well. There are all things that might come after the actual training has taken place. So, it's been a great training session, but some feedback might come and go, well, actually, there's an opportunity there for us to do something slightly different that you didn't know we did, or we can tailor something to you. So, yeah, we've had a lot of customers, certainly from an Access Planet point of view, who have used the sort of feedback methods and surveys to actually create, I guess, a kind of roadmap for their training. So you deliver your original course, your parent course, and then when you follow up with your surveys, you can then say, right, based on the feedback, we'd like to help you with this, and then so on and so on. So yeah, there's a lot of work that can be done around that, which I think is really valuable.
Yeah, I think you guys already mentioned, Melanie, you were talking about this a little bit ago, weren't you, around the feedback that you receive based on whether it's classroom or virtual?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, feedback doesn't just come from your learners, it comes from yourself. So one of the biggest things I've learned throughout sales and through training is by watching myself back and being quite self-critical, I can get some quite good feedback just from watching sessions back, watching especially obviously virtual. One of the things that we try to do here at Sales Geek though more is that we don't wait until we've finished a session with a client, because things change. So the conversation that we had with them 6 months ago when they started their training program with us, it's not going to be where they are now. So many things can have changed within a business. So many new things could be happening. Some things could be happening imminently in the future. And if we blindly follow a training program that we put together 6 months ago without having those regular conversations, without getting that regular feedback, not just from the learners, but from the decision makers as well, from the managers, from the MDs, if we keep in regular contact with them, we can make sure that we've always got a next thing. We've always got, right, what we're doing next with you guys is we're going to be covering this because you said that you're bringing on 5 new salespeople in the next 2 weeks. So we can make sure that we are tailoring every session that we do with people to exactly what they need right now.
I think that ties in as well. I mean, sorry, I do keep going back to the sales aspect of what Terry mentioned before. But if you're getting enough feedback and actually having proper contact with people once you've done the sessions, you will get a heck of a lot more referrals and more business out of it. Feedback doesn't just have to be a tick box exercise. How was your course? Tick this box if you thought it was great, excellent, or okay. If you really want to get some more gains out of your courses, follow up with the decision makers. The person that booked it, the person that attended might not be the person that necessarily booked it. But follow up with both of those people. What did you think of the course? Is there anyone else in the business that might want to come on one of our courses? Just by making those outbound calls afterwards, number one, you'll get some great feedback from delegates around what they thought of your course, and you can tailor and customize your content for next time if it is tailored and customized. If you can't customize the content because maybe it's for a qualification, you can still tailor the experience, but you aren't going to get that or get the same level of depth from that as if you are speaking to people once you've been. I guarantee you, for anybody who's watching this that is looking to build more revenue out of the courses they're doing, the more follow-up that you do with your clients, the more business you will make. There is no easier conversion to make than from someone who's just been on one of your courses, really enjoyed it, gives you some nice feedback, for them going, actually, could we put someone else on? You don't have to build trust. You don't have to sell them the benefits of the course. They've experienced all of that. And that will really help you from a revenue perspective if you can do that. Yeah,
social proof is definitely the most powerful form of marketing or sales, isn't it? You know, that as you say, those referrals, you know, it's all well and good Jonathan sitting there saying that his training is fantastic, or Sales Geek's training is fantastic, but it's far more powerful coming from someone through that. Exactly, Melanie. You know, that's where that comes from, you know, that social proof. You know, someone who's been through the training program, sat with Melanie, sat with Jonathan and the rest of the geeks and kind of gone through that process. You know, it's much better coming from me to say, you know, that you can get results by going on their courses. In terms of the session now, we're going to move on to a Q&A. So we have just had a question through. Anyone else who wants to ask any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. So do people think it's worthwhile surveying trainers to hear their feedback on planned return to classroom? Should we be asking our trainers whether that's a good idea?
I think, I'll be honest, I'd have conversations with them. I mean, we as a team meet up on a reasonably regular basis. I think surveys are brilliant. If you've got a company that's got 100, 200 trainers in it, having those conversations might be slightly difficult to do on a one-to-one basis. But I'd definitely say getting feedback from your team. If you've got a training and delivery team that are out there, speaking to them on a regular basis is so important. If you're not in contact with your delivery team, you're ultimately not in contact with your clients, because they are the touch point between that. And if you step aside from that and are a level away from it, you can never properly get the feedback, the interaction, the thoughts, the comments from what went well, what didn't. And ultimately, your product will never move forward. You'll always be delivering the same thing. And I'm a great believer of marginal gains. I mean, depending on the training that you're doing. So I suppose just to sort of go back, depending on what, so Terry, for example, if you were doing a health and safety qualification, this might not be the case, so apologies if not, but if you are delivering a health and safety diploma, let's say, a client can come to you for that diploma. They can also go to another company for the exact same result, the certification that they get at the end of it, or 10 other companies that they could find on Google. The experience that that client gets from coming to your training, the experience they get from the delivery, the experience that they get on the day, the touch points before, the touch points after, actually are your biggest unique selling point. Because being candid, your unique selling point isn't that we can deliver this certification for you, because 20, 30 other people across the UK could potentially do that. Your biggest unique selling point is the feeling that they get from the sending the video beforehand from your trainer saying, really excited to be seeing you guys on this day. It's the follow-up afterwards of the phone call saying, how did you find everything? What have you done with that knowledge? These are all the marginal gains that will put you above the rest. And ultimately, again, will generate more referrals for you. And it's just a little bit more love and care around that booking to make sure that that person gets an experience where the next time someone else goes, have you ever done any health and safety training? They went, yeah, we did. I did a qualification a few years ago. I can't remember what it was. We want every one of our delegates to go away. And if anyone goes, have you ever done any sales training? You go, Sales Geek. Yeah, go speak to those guys. But that's not just the training that we deliver. If you want your conversion rates increasing, there are other companies out there that can help you increase your conversion rates. There's also other things you can do to increase your conversion rates. But for us, we really try and focus around those marginal goals that will help people remember us in the future as they're going through their careers and their travels. But we'll also give them that sort of limbic system feeling of, yeah, that was really good. We really enjoyed that.
Another question for the panel. Do you have any tips for social media to help maximize classroom course bookings, or I guess just bookings in general, I guess? It doesn't necessarily just have to be classroom. Any ideas? I'm sure that Melanie's got some ideas on.
I think going back to something that Jonathan said before, I think something massive that we found with social media is reciprocity, and the amount of stuff that Sales Geek give on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on all of our social media channels, on Facebook, everything that we put out there. So the tips and tricks to, making people smile with a silly TikTok that's relevant to our industry. It has a point to it. Posts, questions, everything that we put out there that we give to people, not expecting anything in return, gets us the return that we want. So by making sure that we aren't shouting on LinkedIn about what we do, people aren't interested in those posts that go, we do this, I can help you do that, and if you need this, do that. People don't care. People like stories. People like to hear what you've just done with a company, or what you've just experienced with a company, what went well, what didn't. And it's about showing people that you are human. You aren't just a company that wants somebody's money, but there's more to what you offer than just the diploma or the qualification or the certificate that they get at the end of it. It's about making people understand that social media that you are a company that should be worked with by them.
Yeah, I think if you do that well, which you're definitely going to increase, it doesn't matter what you're selling, classroom-based, virtual class, whatever it is, that's definitely going to go a long way to helping.
And personal, I keep dropping my pen, I do apologize. For me as well, personal brand is a huge one. So it's all well and good sharing, posts from the company's page. But if you aren't creating excitement around your trainers, around the people that work in your business and that are actually delivering your product, people can't really get a feel for what you do. So, it goes into, huge companies like Virgin have got, and I'm just going to pull this off the top of my head because I don't know exactly, but the brand page on LinkedIn has something like 10,000 followers. It's probably a lot more. But Richard Branson has 250,000 because people would rather follow the person than follow the brand, because all the brand does is talk about what they do, how they do it, and how you can get involved with that. But Richard Branson posts more of an insight into him as a person and why Virgin is the way it is. And Virgin is the way it is because of him and nothing else. And that's what people are interested in.
Cool. That's a really interesting insight, that, Melanie. I think I would agree with that. that kind of personal element. I think that's something that I need to work on myself. I'm not going to say that I'm particularly good at that on social media. One final question, because we are very short on time actually now. So to the panel, should we consider discounting our classroom training to fill courses, or is there a better way to incentivize customers?
I wouldn't even just do it for free. Just honestly, just do everything for free. You don't need to make profit. You don't need to make money, do you? We'll just do it all for free. It's a difficult one, guys, because you get to the stage. Maybe for example, it's an open course. You've got 8 people on it. You've got another two places available that you could do, whether it's classroom or online. And there's extra profit there. So if your tickets are £100 and you think, do you know what, last 2 tickets I'll do for £50 each, you're going to get another £100 of that booking. Your margins go up, your profit goes up. Sounds great in the short term. What unfortunately you end up doing though is it's so difficult once you've started giving discounts to stop those again. The next person you speak to will go, I thought that was only £50. You put an offer out the other day. It's normally £100. We have 2 places left. Well, I'll give you £50 for it. Once you've started lowering your costs, it is very difficult to climb that mountain back up to where they were, and you erode your profits, you erode your margins coming out from that. The only time at Sales Geek we will ever do discounts is if you are placing multiple bookings. If you say to us, Jonathan, I've got 10 people I'd like to book on that training course, can you do me a discount? Do you know what? I'm all ears. If you've got one person that's coming to book on that course, our cost of sale in there, our marketing in there, our delivery time, our booking of the boardroom, our prices are fair. Our prices for what we return to clients, we've done a lot of testing on this, we feel is very, very good value. Now, if you're placing multiple bookings on there, do you know what? I don't have as much marketing costs anymore because I don't have to go and find 9 other bookings. I don't have to go out to the market and find another 9 people. I don't have to speak to another 9 people on the phone to get those converted in. So there is a cost saving there. But if you're ever going to do a discount, you first need to ask yourself, what am I getting back from this? Because otherwise, you'll just end up in this horrible cycle that we find quite a lot, where everybody's just constantly giving the discounted price and nothing ever gets sold for full price, which means there's no profit coming back into the business can't invest that back into marketing. And ultimately, it sounds small, but if you're constantly discounting, you can't grow. Or your prices are unfair and you're pricing it high to start with to make it look like you're giving a discount. If you're going to give discounts, make sure that you are going to get something back for doing that discount. And it is actually in the best interest of the business to do that rather than just doing it to get a single booking across the line.
Yeah, I completely agree with that as well. And I have to say that by giving discounts or knocking money off, it can have, similar to what Jonathan said, it can have negative consequences. So you devalue what you are providing for a start, which you don't want to do, because what you are providing, whether it is health and safety, whether it's sales training, whether it's first aid, whatever it is, there is a value to that. There is a value to the trainer. There is a value to their knowledge. And by you knocking money off or discounting it just willy-nilly because you feel like you need to fill the class up, you devalue the course, you devalue the trainer's knowledge, but then also you find yourself in a position where, because we all know that clients talk, they talk about the training, they talk about companies that they work with, and they confer, they cross notes and everything like that. And if a previous customer finds out that your new client has just got your training for half the price that they paid, they're not coming back to you.
Absolutely not.
They are not coming back to you at all. And one thing that I will just leave with there is that price is literally only an issue or an objection in the absence of value. So if your clientele cannot see the value in what you're doing, then you've missed something there.
There was a good technique that I think it was Andy Bounds. If anyone doesn't follow Andy on LinkedIn, follow him. But Andy said I deal with discounts really easily. Whenever someone says to me, "Can you do a discount?" He says, "I just get my notebook out and I don't say anything. I start going through it. I'm going through and going, just let me check 1 second." Then they go, "What are you checking for?" And he goes, "I'm just seeing if the B team's available." Nobody ever wants to deal with a B team.
I think you nailed that, Melanie, on the you don't devalue what you do. Completely agree with that. Absolutely. Anyway, we are out of time today. So thank you very much to Sales Geek for joining us today. Great insights as always. Anyone who wants any information from any of us, please feel free to get in touch. Find us on LinkedIn. And yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Big thanks. See you later, guys.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.